Hey guys, welcome back to another analysis video of a miniature chess game. On the agenda this afternoon, we're going to take a look at a recent game from the World Rapid Championship between Grandmasters Sergey Erenburg from USA, rated 2510, and elite Grandmaster GM Firouzja from France, formerly from Iran, rated 2763, one of the best players in the world. This is the first game of 2025, the first video, and as some of you know by now, I've been traveling for the last 2 months, basically on and off. I was a whole month in Singapore in the World Championship. Then I stopped back to Dubai for a few days, Malta, a tournament also in the south of Spain. So now I'm going to try and catch up during the 2025 year when I'm not traveling so much. And you can be expecting a video from me every day or every 2 days. Hopefully every day, but every 2 days will also be possible, depending on my schedule. I'm going to try and get between 3 and 5 videos a week on the channel with the idea to give interesting content for you guys. You can learn chess with me, improve. I also improve looking at the games, and hopefully reach the goal of 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible, because that's when YouTube opens up the live broadcast options, which will allow me to play tournaments and analyze games live with you guys, play with you guys, and also broadcast tournaments like the Minorca April tournament, where I'm due to be one of the commentators. So hit that subscribe button if you still are not a subscriber. Let's get to 1,000 as soon as possible. Let's get back to the game. As I said before, this is the first round of the World Rapid, and I've already selected quite a few games from that tournament, and I'll also be looking at the women's event, and I think we'll learn quite a few things. In this game, we're going to learn how a stronger player like Firouzja is able to unbalance a tactical game against a weaker opponent. Of course, Erenburg is 2510. He is a grandmaster, very strong player. But the difference between a 2510 and a 2800 player is massive. It's massive. But if he has to win, and it is a rapid event, a Swiss rapid event, he needs to keep a bit of life in the game. He needs to unbalance, possibly take a few risks to achieve an option to win. So, what does Firouzja do? Let's see. Knight f3, d6, bishop to b5. This is the Moscow variation, sidestepping a lot of theoretical lines and just going for a position. Knight c6 and bishop to d7 are very straightforward and good moves, but most of the top players prefer knight to d7. The idea behind knight to d7 is at some point try and get white to exchange off his bishop and have the two bishops in a position where it can be opened later on. Erenburg plays c3, straightforward, going for the d4 break, and also permitting the bishop to drop back to c2 if it's if black tries to go after it with a6 and b5. Knight to f6, hitting e4. It's a very good move. White doesn't really want to play d3 because he wants to go for d4. So he has to play queen to e2. a6. Of course, bishop takes knight here would be very good for white, for black, sorry. We could take with the queen or with the bishop. Place the bishop on c6. I think we'll be doing quite well here. So Firouzja's opponent plays bishop a4. Sorry. b5. Let's turn on our main light. There you go. Bishop to c2. Oops. Okay. And bishop to b7. Now already we can see here how black is trying to unbalance the position. Instead of going for a symmetrical position, he's going for a anti-symmetrical position where both players are trying to grab space and try and define their middle game plans. And there's no clear path for white to simplify and equalize the game. So what black is trying to do is keep a lot of pieces on the board. That's a good idea if you consider yourself to be the better player and you want to win against a lower rated player. Try and keep as many pieces on the board as possible. Castle. And here Firouzja makes another interesting decision. He could go e5, very sensible, grabbing space. I would actually very easily go for this idea. But after d4, we're going to have some sort of Ruy Lopez. You guys get the idea. No? This sort of Ruy Lopez, Zaitsev sort of position. Very solid, probably not to the taste of Alireza when he plays the Sicilian. He could also play e6 with bishop e7. This would also be a good way of maintaining the balance. But then d4, castle. Again, this is probably okay, but maybe just too passive for Alireza. He goes for g6, the double fianchetto. d4, and now very important. We don't want to change pawns too soon because then white gets in knight to c3, bishop to f4, fast development. So Firouzja plays bishop to g7, keeping the tension. And this is very good because now white has an array of options and he might make a mistake. He can take the pawn on c5. He can close with d5. He can go for e5, trying to complicate the position. He can go for a4, which by the way is, according to the engine, the best move. So many different choices. And when you give your opponent choices, that's when they sometimes make the incorrect choice. So, number one, keep the position unsymmetrical and don't exchange too many pieces. Number two, give your opponent as many choices as you can, hoping that he will make the incorrect choice. And Erenburg does a slightly incorrect choice. Now b3 to play bishop to b2 can't really be considered bad, but when the bishop gets to b2, he's blocked in by the pawns, and also the f4 square could be a weakness. Now let's see how Firouzja takes advantage of this. Castle and rook c8. Again, keeping, the pressure without exchanging pawns, keeping the tension on the board. Of course, at any point, white could play d5, but then we can put a bit more pressure on the position, or even maybe go c4 at some point, get the knight to c5. So we still have ways to make white's life a bit uncomfortable. In this variation especially, you can notice the bishop on b2 is not very well placed. So white played a4. He's still playing quite reasonable. b3, bishop b2 might be a small inaccuracy, but it's definitely not a big mistake. And now Alireza takes advantage of the momentum. He swaps on d4, opening up the rook against the bishop, which means that knight to d2 is no longer possible. And also it means that the queen on e2 is overloaded. This is a tactical theme we use when a piece, generally a big piece like a queen or a rook, is doing more than one thing at the same time. Now that's dangerous, because as you can see, knight to h5 hits the f4 square and already threatens some tactical shots with the rook on c2 and the knight on f4. By the way, as I was analyzing this position, the computer engine suggested a move which I might have thought during the game, maybe even Firouzja thought about it during the game, but I don't think I would have done it. The move is rook takes c2, sacking the exchange. Queen takes, and now bishop takes e4, and now just dropping back with the bishop to c6. Now I would have seen this, and probably my my opinion would have been, I have some compensation for the exchange, but there's really no need to do this. So I'm not going to do it. But the computer actually gives black as an advantage in this position. The bishop plus the pawn, plus the d5 square, plus the bad bishop on b2 blocked him by the pawn, plus the queen which will go to b7. This is actually better for black, but hard to spot as an option. Also, when you have a perfectly good position, you don't normally do these sorts of things. Or what if it's bad? What if you don't know? But it's good to see that a rook for a minor piece plus a pawn, a center pawn, plus some extra positional compensation like the d5 square or a weak pawn for white, that should be enough, not for equality, but even to claim an advantage. So something to remember. So many things to learn from this game, no? Unbelievable. So, knight to h5, going to f4. And here, our friend played a mistake. Erenburg played a weak move, which was pawn takes pawn. Now, according to the computer, not easy to see, but he should have played g3, controlling the knight and preventing knight to f4. But of course, that does sort of give extra strength to the b7 bishop. So I understand why he doesn't want to play g3. So Erenburg played a takes b5. Firouzja jumps with the knight to f4, hitting the queen. Remember, the bishop on c2 is also under attack. So queen to d2 is basically the only sensible move. And now look at this lovely move. Bishop to h6, bringing another piece to the attack with tempi, because he threatens knight to h3 check, winning the queen. So king to h1. Of course, it gets out of the way of the discovered check of the knight, but the king is now on the same diagonal as the bishop. Dangerous. Pawn takes pawn. d5. I think this is a sensible move, opening up the bishop for the b2. And now e5. Lovely. Either you take en passant, which will allow my b7 bishop to be active again, or your bishop on b2 will be blocked there forever, and I'm protecting my knight on f4, and then I'll get in f5, a bit like the King's Indian defense. So Erenburg chose the lesser of the two evils, taking on e6. But now the rook is also in play. Look, I've highlighted with the green the f8 rook. That rook will play a big part now, as you will see. Now, according to the engine, knight to a3 hitting the pawn on b5 was not a correct move now. The best move was to play rook to a7. But of course, you have to understand that Erenburg is playing against a very strong player and he really wants to develop the rest of his pieces. This was the best move. However, to play rook to a7, Erenburg had to calculate beforehand queen to b6, attacking the rook, queen to d4, only move, threatening queen to h8, but also exchanging queens. And he had to see that after the exchange of queens, he's dropping the bishop, but he gets back the bishop on b7. And he also had to see that his position was reasonable. And it's definitely not easy to understand that here, with knight to g2 shots, knight to e2 shot, knight to c5 shot, the rook on the 7th line, it's definitely not easy to see that white is okay here. So he missed this option. He played knight to a3, knight to f6, sacking the pawn, knight takes b5. Now the computer gives knight to g4 as the best attacking move for black, with the idea knight takes d6, knight to h3, creating all sorts of shenanigans because the knight protects the bishop on h6, which is attacking the queen, which is attacking f2. Anything could happen here. But Firouzja didn't calculate this, or didn't see it, or just preferred his own move, which is d5, which is also good. He avoids losing the pawn. He gives extra strength to the bishop, but he did allow here bishop to f6, knight to d6, and after the swap of pieces, it does seem that white should be able to hold this position. He does have an extra pawn, but black does have some attacking chances on the king side. Who knows what would have happened if Erenburg had played bishop takes f6, but he didn't. He made a mistake. He played pawn takes pawn, and now there's no going back. Bishop takes pawn, threatening to sack on g2, and crushing with bishop takes f3. So let's say, for example, white plays rook to a7, just a neutral move. We sack here, we hit here, and among other things, we drop off the queen here. Of course, maybe queen here threatens mate. So just against rook to a7, we might have to be slightly more careful because we don't have time to capture here. So let me check this just for a moment more. Yes, maybe I'm making a mistake here. I think I'd change my mind and probably play bishop takes f3 first, queen takes queen, stick in this intermediate move, and now just recapture. And I think I'm doing well here. Sorry, let's recapture properly. Maybe with the other rook. It's hard to say. I have to think which rook to recapture with because I don't want to stop attacking this bishop, but then again, I want to have my knight protected. Maybe with this rook. I think I must be doing very well here. And this is just one line. I'm sure there's many other lines against a random move like rook to a7. There must be many other lines here as well. Even rook takes c2 looks very promising. Queen 2 and something like this. This is what happened in the game, so even this looks very promising. Anyway, instead of that, Erenburg played queen to d1, trying to protect everything. But look how many pieces we have attacking the local sector where the white king is established. Just too many pieces attacking and too many white pieces far away. So it's not surprising that there's a sacrifice, a destruction sacrifice here. Knight takes g2. Now the queen is already overloaded, protecting the knight and the bishop. So after king takes, we go knight to h5, threatening bishop takes f3. This is an eternal pin. It's very difficult to get the knight out of the pin. White is able to bring the knight back, but now I'd all like you to pause the video and try and find the killing move that forced Erenburg to resign, making this game a miniature, an under 25 move. So if you want to pause, you can see all the tactics here. Try and find your move. Did you spot it? I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. Yes, of course. We go rook takes c2. Fantastic move. Getting back the piece and taking advantage of the overloading tactics in the position. So for example, if the rook is captured with the knight, we win several ways. We could just capture the knight and win the queen. But if we want to make something nice, we go check. We sack the rook. And now there's many ways to win, but this is quite a nice one. Check with the bishop and mate rook to h3. This is just one of the very nice mates that are in the position. Alternatively, if he captures with the queen, which is the most likely scenario, we stick in the check again. We sack the rook. If he captures with the knight, bishop takes f3 as mate. But there's really no other way to go because it's hard to find a good move for white here with threatening rook takes f2 with mating threats, among other moves. I just don't see a move here for black. He doesn't even have a check here, but we just captured. Oh, by the way, if he does something like this, remember we just block checking the king and picking up the piece that has hit us here. So, I thought this was a very, very instructive game where we can see a very strong player taking a few risks, reasonable risks, to unbalance the game against a weaker player. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had fun looking at this game. Some of you may have seen this game before when it was played at the end of the year, but I still hope to have brought some extra dynamics, some extra instruction to help you guys improve, learn, and of course, have fun here on the channel. See you soon.